Hello everybody, my name is Kat Bowser. I'm your resident fantasy therapist and welcome to my channel. Those of you who are here for the first time, welcome. My name is Kat Bowser. I'm a licensed therapist. I'm also a writer working on my first novel. On my channel, we dig into the psychology behind the characters in writing because that is the best way to create a well-rounded world, is to really get to the heart of your characters. So that's the angle we take with everything we talk about: world building, plot, character, and everything that falls in between. So today we have a new tag that I am doing. It's one I've seen circulated a lot, but I'd like to thank Joey Paul for tagging me in it. And that is the Writers Are Weird tag. So without any further ado, let's just jump straight into it. So first question, do you have any bizarre internet searches? And if so, what is an example? What writer doesn't? I really think that most writers have some kind of bizarre thing that they're always researching or looking into. For myself, I actually tend to, if I can, I try to do research to specific people. So instead of necessarily relying on Google or the internet or books, I try to find a specific person I can actually talk to. When I was creating my current world, I actually talked to my husband's, one of his friends who is a geologist, and asked him, does this make scientific sense? And he said, yeah. But the one I want to bring up for this question is when I was writing a couple years ago, I was still working at an inpatient psych facility. And for the story I was writing, I was trying to figure out, I needed a drug of some sort that would knock a character out. And generally that's kind of hard to get specifics on through the internet for obvious reasons. But one thing that's always bugged me is when people get little details like that wrong, especially when they are tremendously wrong. I remember I read a story a couple years ago, and I don't remember the specifics of it, but there was a drug they were using to knock out like an adult, and it was an elephant tranquilizer, and the amount that they were using would have killed somebody. So that kind of thing bothers me. So in this case, I was actually talking with some of the nurses on the unit about my story and the situation that I needed. And halfway through the conversation, I hear this, that sounds interesting. And I look over, and one of the psychiatrists was actually eavesdropping on our conversation. And he asked me, he said, do you need specifics? I said, yes, I need specifics. And he actually informed me, well, first off, you're going about it the wrong way. You don't want to look at age, you want to look at weight. And he actually sat down with me for about 10 minutes and gave me a specific combo of medications that would do what I wanted. So I love it. But I think that's probably the weirdest one I've come across. Question number 2, do you write people into your stories that you like or dislike, and do you kill them off and or raise them to power in your story? Yes and no. And by that I mean I don't take specific people and put them in my story. What I do though is I take traits from specific people, and they usually get woven into one of my characters. Like for example, one of my characters, Timma, his sensitivity and his general just way of interacting with people definitely comes from my husband. And then I have other characters like, let's see here, Akiska has traits of my nephews in him, but things like that. I'm more likely to take specific traits or hobbies or things I find interesting about people and mix them together into characters rather than use specific people in a story. And I'm not going to say I wouldn't ever put a specific person in a story, but it has to be for a particular reason. For example, in my fantasy series I'm working on now, my nephews specifically asked me, can we be in your story? And I said, okay, sure, because they're 6 and 4. And so I asked them, how do you want me to put you in my story? And one of them said they wanted to be a giant, and the other one said they want to be a dragon. So at some point, you will run into my nephews in my story, but not under their specific names. So overall, I use bits and pieces more than whole people, unless someone specifically approaches me. Question number 3. Does personal hygiene sometimes come second to writing for you? No. No, 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 no. Uh, I was actually surprised when I found this question because to me, I can't imagine my hygiene coming second, but that's just me. And I think part of the reason is I am very particular, particularly about my hair and my face, because both of them get very oily very quickly. And when that happens, it drives me crazy. I can't stand it. It distracts me. So I always have to shower before I start writing. I always have to shower. So if I'm so if I write in the afternoon, I have taken a shower in the morning. And if I'm gonna write at night, like stay up late, I'll take my shower and put on my PJs first before I start writing. And that's just me. As long as I have on something comfortable, I can write, but my hair has to be washed, my face has to be washed. Otherwise, I can't focus. Right, question number 4. Do you go on baby name websites to come up with names for your characters? I have baby name books, guys. I have multiple baby name books. I've gone through and highlighted specific names because they have a specific meaning. So yes, I use baby name websites. But because I usually am writing fantasy, I don't like to take names just as they are and use them. Because especially if I'm doing an alien world, I don't think that makes a lot of sense. So what I'll usually do is I'll take a name and I'll shift it a little bit. So let's say that I'm looking for a name for a culture that is based slightly on, like, say, Slavic or Viking or things like that. I'll go look in those types of names, find a name I like with a meaning I like, but then I'll shift it around. Another thing I'll do is almost all my stories have con languages, made up languages. And so sometimes I will make names from that language and give it a meaning in their language. So I use the baby name websites, the meanings, and a little bit of my own creativity to make my names up. Question number 5. Do you have a list of actors and or actresses that would play your characters in a movie or a TV adaptation? Not entirely. And by that I mean most of my characters are not human. So if they were ever to make an adaptation, it would probably be with heavy costume, makeup, or CGI. So it wouldn't necessarily be the actor that you were seeing. I have always thought instead of specific voice actors that could potentially play my characters. I don't specifically have a list of, okay, I would want this person to play this one to play this one, but more a list of, okay, here are some voice actors I think are very good, know their stuff, can do things very well, can convey emotion very well. I would want them to play a character. Don't necessarily know which one yet, but definitely I know the ones I would want. And one of them is Jim Cummings. If I could pick any voice actor, I would want Jim Cummings. Question number 6. Have you ever stared at a stranger because they look like your characters? Nope. Because like I said, most of my characters aren't human. Most of them are humanoid, animalistic type characters. And they're anthropomorphic usually, and I just don't see them in humans. I have occasionally kind of just stopped and looked at someone who had some very odd behaviors, like something odd they were doing, but that's more just the writer and me saying, that's interesting, maybe I can use that. But specifically because they remind me of a character, no. Question 7. Do you talk to yourself to work through certain scenes? Yes. Specifically, I tend to do it when I'm having characters use my con languages. And so I will actually say the con languages out loud so that I get the idea of, okay, here's a language that's going to be hard for this character to pronounce, and so on and so forth. I will also sometimes do their facial expressions and just kind of play around with that to see how it turns out. I usually do it when I'm at home. Like I'm not gonna necessarily do it when I'm walking down the street or if I'm driving or anything like that. I'm usually gonna do it when I'm at home. And most of the time I'm gonna call my husband in and say, okay, here's what I'm thinking of, here's what I've tested out, what do you think? And then he'll give me his input. So he's a very strong supporter, and so I always tend to run things by him. Question 8, while you're writing, do you make the expressions your characters make? Sometimes. Kind of like with the previous question, depends on what it is. I think if I'm having them specifically do a weird face or an odd face, I will do it myself just to see if it feels natural or if someone could potentially do it. I think sometimes people write in these crazy facial expressions in their books and their stories, and you read it and you're like, I don't see how that's possible. So it's more for me to kind of run it through a is this physically possible check than anything. Question 9, do you ever practice answering big interview questions in case you make it big? No. I think every writer has the dream of making it big, but I don't spend time thinking about questions I might be asked. Mainly because I think as a writer, if you get to that point, you should know your story well enough that you should be able to answer without a problem. But that's just me. Question number 10, do you have a soundtrack or a playlist for your story? Not specifically for the story, but I do have it for what I would call inspiration for the story. So if I'm writing a specific scene or anything like that, then I am going to have a playlist that I would pull up. So like I have a playlist for if I'm doing like a horror scene or if I'm doing a scene to build suspense, I have a playlist for that. But for the specific story itself, as of right now, not completely, but that might change in the next couple months. So that was the Writers Are Weird tag, and yes, we are very weird. So I hope you guys enjoyed, and if you guys have not yet done this tag, consider yourself tagged by me, because I think this is a really fun tag to do, and I think it makes you consider a couple things that I didn't think about. So thank you guys for stopping in. If you are so obliged, feel free to subscribe and leave some comments below. I always love reading them and responding to them, and I will see you guys in the next video.